This episode is brought to you by our wonderful sponsors Galaxy Finance. Check them out at galaxyfinance.com.au. The great ones, they're different. They really are. Not better, just different. Sure, there's a physical power, a mental strength, a complex but resolute constitution too. There's a whole lot more than just the measurables. That's something else, that intangible. It separates us from them. Welcome to the Legends series on Andy Raymond Unfiltered. This one, he had it all. One of the greatest names to ever step foot onto a rugby league field. One of the greatest blokes and storytellers off it too. But who is Bob McCarthy?
Well, Bob McCarthy is an ex-rugby league player that grew up in the suburb of Redfern, born in Surrey Hills in St Margaret's Hospital, and was always a South fan when a younger guy, and always thought about playing for the mighty Rabbits one day, and eventually I got my chance, and up until a couple of years ago I held the record for the most number of games for South Sydney until Johnny Sutton flew past me about 100 miles an hour, and I think I'm now the second. But I held it for 40-odd years, so I'm pretty proud of that record.
70-something years young, you look like you could put Jason Taumalolo on his arse and outrun James Tedesco to the corner. You've had a professional involvement in rugby league since 1963. What's the one question you reckon over that period you've been asked the most? Because we'll try and avoid it.
Well, I think it always gets round to that grand final. I mean, I scored 119 tries in first grade, and everyone seems to just talk about that grand final, and they don't sort of talk about the tries that led up to the grand final that got us in the grand final, but that's the most, the one that's been asked the most.
I tell a fib, we'll talk about that later. 58 years involvement in the game. Do you like the 2021 version of rugby league players and where the game is at?
I like it until they keep changing the rules all the time.
Yes.
You know, I mean, the game was invented in 1908 for the rules to stay there forever. I mean, now they just keep changing and all that, and things that happened years and years and years ago now could have been tries and all that type of stuff, and premierships could have won by someone else and all that type of stuff. I think they just should have stuck with the rules, leave them as they are, and let's go on with it and just play as it is. But changing the rules every time just to please someone that's only just come into the game, I don't think it's right for that. And, sometimes I lose interest in some games, but I like watching some of the games now. I like watching the mighty South play, the way they throw that ball around. I mean, even people that aren't South supporters would watch, can't wait for South to play.
No mobile phones, no camera phones, no paparazzi in the 60s. Is that a good thing? You could have a beer and misbehave without being headline and front page news.
Geez, well, I was an old altar boy, so I'm sweet, but there's a lot of guys out there. There's a lot of guys out there that would have been in jail, but, I mean, our biggest vice in our day was the grog. I mean, you could drink and drive, and it was just part and parcel of the day. And you went to work and, went to train in the afternoon. And, Clive used to train us when Clive came into South. He trained us for about 40 minutes. And then I'd be over to the club or around the pub there at Waterloo, the George Hotel, and we'd be there till 10 o'clock every night and drive home. And then the night you had off, we'd meet at the Cauliflower Hotel and have a few beers down there, and back to training Thursday night, and Friday back to the Cauliflower. So it was just one big drinkathon, and everyone sort of done it. And everyone, just people in, not so much footballers, but people in normal life just drank every day, and that was just part of the deal.
Prior to your debut and through the early years of grade footy, the St George side won 11 straight from 56 to 66. Were they just a completely different level to other sides from what you recall?
Oh, easy. I come in when I was 18 against them, and I remember running. We played them my first time against them. I was 18. I was at Cogger Oval, and I remember we ran out first, and then they come out through the tunnel, and they were monstrous, with those white jumpers. White for some reason makes you look bigger. And out they come. There was Provan, there was Clay, there was Rasmussen, there was Dick Hart, and I'm thinking, geez, what a side, and I hadn't even got down to Raper and Gasner in that yet. That hadn't come out, and I thought, but it was good to play, even though they put 30 or 40 on you. You know, it was good to play against them. You could see what level you had to reach to be a top player, and to play against them each time was like playing against the Australian side. And everyone, you know, as I said, if we got beat by 30 or 40, you always learned something. Now you learnt the speed of the game, you knew what you had to do, and you had to take it up the middle a couple of times to suck them in and do this and do that. Because most coaches in the old days just go out there and bash them. You know, there was no sort of technical stuff around. And until Harry Barth and these guys, Bernie Purcell, these guys come in and they put a bit of what's name into the game.
Bit of tactics, bit of finesse.
Well, a bit of handwork, and you know, like Harry Barth, I think changed the course of Australian rugby league. Like up until the 50s and late 50s, and England were always hard to beat. New Zealand used to knock us over. France used to knock us over. And we used to win every now and then. And when Harry Barth and Ken Carney and there's another guy, Rex Mossop, come back from England, they brought back them the ball handling capabilities, because I think Australia in the old days used to just pick all these big muscly blokes and think because the Poms were big and fat that they'd out-muscle them and outplay them all. But what they didn't realise, they might have been big and fat from the chest down, but from the shoulders to their chest, they were powerful, because the majority of them were all miners. And when I say miners, they dug with hammers, with shovels and spades, shovels and picks, and now it's all machinery and all that. And so these blokes were real powerful up the top, and the only reason they had big bellies was because it was so hot down in the things. They'd come up and had to drink pints and had to put the thing back in, but we used to think they were overweight in that, but they weren't. They were plus they were skilled, because they got brought up on a soccer regime where you give the ball to a player in a better position than yourself. And we sort of, Harry Barth and these guys brought this back from England. And from there, when you got your Arthur Beetsons and your Bob O'Reillys and all these type of guys started moving the ball like them, and then all of a sudden we went past them with the muscly stuff and all that type of stuff, and now we're hard to beat.
It was a really significant shift in the way rugby league was played. Some of the ball playing of that era from those English guys that appeared overweight and unfit was just
it was
amazing.
Unbelievable. I remember 58, I was sitting on the hill there at the cricket ground, and we won the first test against them. I think it was 25-8, and they brought a bloke in called Vince Corralius.
Oh, yes.
And he ripped us apart in the second and the third test. The third test they won 40 to something, and some of them guys have played in that third test side for Australia, never played for Australia again, and yet they were household names. And then the 62 side that came out, I think they were the best ever. I mean, they learned from their 58 tour, and they come out here and they just annihilated us, and everyone thought, well, oh, wait, they play St George at the end. St George will give it to them, because you know, they were the Australian side, and they had the combination there, whereas normally when you pick test sides, you get picked on the Sunday night. You have 2 training sessions together. And you got guys from Queensland, guys from the country, and you've got to try and mould a combination over an hour or something twice in two days. And you normally get belted sort of thing. But with St George, we thought, well, the combination's there, and you wouldn't believe it. First up, I don't know if you remember the game, but St George scored in the first couple of minutes. And we thought, well, that's it. We'll show these pommy bastards how we play in Australia. And from there on in, someone woke them up, and I think they won 30-something to 5.
Wow.
So they were just so great. And a couple of them guys came out here. Dick Huddock come to St George, and David Bolton come out to Balmain. I think like called Ken Noble, who's a prop forward, he came out and played with Balmain. Didn't have much success, so I think he was a bit too big for the game out here. And I think it was more suited to rugby union. But they were just a great side. And as I said before, I think we learned all our football prowess. I think pretty sure Beetson and O'Reilly and all them blokes, John Sattler and all them all learnt from these great players that came out in the late 50s, early 60s.
It's a very different game now. Is it a better game now?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's good that they're back 10 metres. I mean, back way before the 50s, they had the 1 yard rule. I mean, I remember seeing all them guys that played for South mainly, and at the Kangaroos at the reunions, at the South reunions, and their noses were splattered all over their face, and they had ears like potato scallops, because they used to say they just reach across and just smack the blokes in the ears, and everyone had cauliflower ears and back, and they weren't real big blokes back in those days. If you read the history of rugby league, you see in 1908 they say they're 11.5 stone front rower.
Wow.
I mean how would they played today against Glenn Lazarus and these guys, Steve Roach and all these type of guys, and You wonder how, even so much Reg Gasney now,
Yep.
how would he stand up to Greg Inglis and Mel Meninga and Gene Miles and these type of blokes? Although I must say, in Reg's defence, he did play against Harry Wells, who was a big bloke, and he used to handle him all right. Yeah.
Arguably the biggest change in the game's history was 1967, from the unlimited tackle rule to the 4-tackle rule. You played under both rules. It's a huge adjustment for everyone, isn't it?
It was. Well, going from hold on to the ball, if you dropped it, you go back to second grade. You had
Is that what it was like?
Oh, yeah, you had to retain possession because while you had it, they couldn't score.
Yep.
And ironically, St George used to give it to you in the first 20 minutes, then bash the crap out of you.
Wow.
Then run over the last 60 minutes because they had these great players. But when the 67 rule came in, the 4-tackle rule, it was a bit like touch first up because you only had three tackles and then you had to kick the ball downtown. So a lot of the sides then weren't, a lot of the players then weren't getting much playing time.
Yeah.
And Clive Churchill in his wisdom saw myself and Ron Coop, we were both fast as that in the backs. And they said, look, you might get the ball in free tackle, so get out in the backs and when we throw it around, you'll get the ball and hope you can strike, And we done that and we were pretty successful over the first 6 years of it until they changed it to the 6-tackle rule.
Any elite athlete will tell you it takes more than just being physically fit to be at your best. And our friends at Galaxy Finance can have you at the top of your financial game. From home loans to investments and self-managed super funds, they provide complete solutions. Call Galaxy Finance on 1300 91 7740 and mention you heard it on Andy Raymond Unfiltered to get an obligation-free chat to see how Galaxy Finance can assist you.
In 67, Clive Churchill was appointed Rabbitohs coach. You didn't get to play with the little master. What do you recall of him as a coach, but also as a bloke?
Well, he's a terrific bloke. I mean, everyone told us about how you like him first up, and when he come in, it was just one of the boys, because of his status in the game, and everyone accepted him, and Clive, by his own admission, wasn't a great tactical sort of coach.
Yep.
He made sure we were all on the same sheet of music before a game, and made sure we're all fit and all that type of stuff, and I think you could see the talent we had in the team. I mean, 71 side, we out of the 13 players on the field, we 12 played for Australia, 3 had captained Australia. So all you had to do was make sure we were on the right page at each game, and made sure our minds were on the game. And coming at half time, if we were getting beat, give us a bit of a dressing down.
Yep.
Although one time there, I think we played Norse, and we remember the old City Country games.
Yes.
I think we had 12 in the City Country games in first and seconds.
It's amazing.
And we're playing North Sydney. And North Sydney used to give it to us even when we were at our top, if we were fit and all that. And they knocked us over or they nearly beat us. Anyway, this particular day, I forget what year it was. And we get smashed at half time, and Clive come in, and we thought, oh, well, here we go. And he just looked at us, pulled his coat out, went like that, shook his coat, let us if to say you can't play, and walked back out the room, didn't say a word. Johnny Sattler stood up and said, okay, you know what he means, we've got to get our finger out. And away we went out, and when I scored a couple and Cootie scored a couple and Cleary scored a couple, and we finished up just knocking them over. Because Irvine back then, we were scoring tries prolifically. Anyway, he was scoring every week, and every other side beat him by 30 or 40, and every time we played against them, we were just lucky to get out with the skin of it,
Wow.
Out North Sydney Oval especially.
You said Clive wasn't a huge tactician, yet he put the 2 back rowers on an edge where they play now in 2021. So someone was 50 years ahead of their time. Yeah,
well, I think Clive played against the great French side that came out here in 51. They had 2 big second rowers. Apparently they were as big as us, or might even be bigger. They were a bloke called Poncenet and Brousset. And they were just running riot by just getting out amongst the backs and running off 5/8s and all that type of stuff. And they just say running off the edge, and he just sort of just said just do what they done sort of thing, and away we went. I mean, I went from scoring 4 or 5 tries a year to scoring 20. I think twice I was going to be the leading try scorer, and Irvine got me one year, And the other time,
There's no shame in that.
I know, and Lionel Williamson got me the other year.
No shame in that either with Lionel.
And the thing was, I scored in those games, and I thought, well, that's it. I've got it wrapped up because I might have led by one.
Yep.
And then, especially with Irvine, apparently I thought I'm sweet here. I'm owned by two because they were playing some good side.
Yeah.
And I remember Johnny Martin came in. He said, "Oh, you missed out, Mac." I said, "Don't tell me he scored." He said he scored 4.
Oh.
You know, and you see his record now, 212 tries playing with North Sydney. Like how good a player he was. He was just so quick and so elusive.
I'm in my element here, talking to a statesman like yourself and hearing first-hand stories about guys like Clive, Churchill, brilliant. Now, over this period, you and your South Sydney Rabbitohs were very dominant, premierships in 67, 68, 70, 71. You played in 3 of them. It's often said the first one is the most special one. Is that the case?
Yeah, well, we got beaten 65 and 69, so we played in 5 grand finals. And people always say that you got to lose one to win one.
Yep.
And when we went down to St George in 65 in that record crowd, people turned up that day because they could see that the St George era was over.
Yep.
Because we'd beaten them 3 times during there. We beat them in the pre-season comp. We beat them, I think it was about 8-5 or 7-5 when all their stars were in New Zealand with the Australian side.
Yep.
And I remember Frank Facer, their CEO, saying, "Oh, wait till we get all our stars back. We'll tear them up at the cricket ground in the second round." And when we played them the cricket, we beat them by a bigger score. I think that's why that crowd turned up, because they could still, well, the era's over, the dynasty's over, and now this young Rabbitoh dynasty's going to take over. And what it was, we missed out in 66, and then we come back in 67, and when we played in that grand final, even though it was only 12-10, we were that determined to win the premiership, and it was a great occasion for everyone. And then to back up the next year, the Dua-Reap, second up in the was sensational. Well, I didn't play that year.
Yep.
I played second grade in it. I played during the year. I don't know if you remember in the grand final when I scored that try, I pulled my hamstring. In 88, it just got worse.
Yep.
And I only played a handful of games. And prior to coming into the semis, Clive said to me, "I don't think I'll trust you." He said, "Just play second grade and see how you go." And I played second grade. I think we played Balmain, and they were pretty good. I think they were leading the comp, and I think we beat them 31-0. And I scored a couple of tries, and I said to Clive, "My leg's all right." And then when we come to train the Tuesday night, he had a bit of a sleep over it and thought, "No, I can't trust you." Because in those days, you're allowed 1 replacement up till half time and none in the second half. That's why a lot of guys used to stay on with their broken legs and all that type of stuff. And he said, "I can't trust you, Mac." And I said, "Mate, I'm right." I said, "You seen me play last week. I scored heap of them and nothing happened." Anyway, he said, "No, I can't trust you." So he put Bobby Moses into the second row, and then they beat Manly. We won second grade. You wouldn't believe the second grade side I went back to. Was me and Gary Stevens were second row, and Paul Slate was lock. We had Ray Bredigan in the back line with Ivan Jones, who played in the grand final the year before, with Kevin Longbottom. George Piggins was hooker.
This is the reserve grade side.
Reserve grade side.
Wow.
So it was like playing first grade anyway. Naturally, we won. And so we won the first grade and second grade. And that was one of the reasons I didn't play in that 68 grand final, mainly because of the hamstring issues. And you wouldn't believe one day there, Michael Cleary's sprint trainer said to me, "How come you keep pulling your hamstrings?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "I do everything what the doctor tells me." He says, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, I just rest up and put heat on it and rest up." And I said, "When I go out to run, it just pings on me all the time." He said, "You're doing the wrong thing." I said, "Well, he's a doctor. He's a bloke's telling me." And he said, "No." He said, "What you got to do?" He said, "You go out and run." He said, "And when you jog," he said, "all the blood's going through the tissues in your muscle, and that breaks up all that congestion where you've tore it, and it clears all that congealed up, the scar tissue, and you get your muscle back." So I started doing that, and all of a sudden I never pulled a hamstring again forever and a day, even when I went back to Canterbury and all that, you know. So he knew more about these other guys. He said, "No," he said, "you got to go and run it out." And I said, "Oh, it hurts." He said, "It's got to hurt you." He said, "Because you got to get that blood running through the fibres of your muscle.
The scar tissue.
Yeah, he said, "That'll clear all that scar tissue up where you keep ripping it all the time." He said, "Because you're big up top, and your legs aren't big enough for your body, and you're just ripping it all the time. Plus, you're doing the wrong training for it, you know."
You're listening to Andy Raymond Unfiltered, the Legends series. We have corporate and private sponsorship packages available. You set the terms. For further information on how you can become part of the team, go to the website AndyRaymondUnfiltered.com.au and hit the sponsorship tab.
That conversation between Clive and yourself in '68, heartbreaking?
Oh, yeah, especially, I thought, well, I'm right, mate.
Yeah.
Sweet. I thought we'd win about 6 or 7 or 8, 9 grand finals the side we have. Plus we could see what was coming through on the assembly line.
Yeah.
Like we had Brenning and all these blokes coming through, and I thought we'll break the St George dynasty, but unfortunately it didn't happen. And then when I played the next year in '69, all hell broke loose because of what happened, and we couldn't get them off the ground, and they're all getting suntans and whatever.
Yeah.
And Davey Bolton, before the game, was as white as a sheet. When the game finished, he went down that many times. He looked like Eric Sims. He had a good suntan.
The '67 grand final against Canterbury. What do you recall of that try? Because 54 years later, Macca, it still gets played hundreds of times a year.
Yeah, I feel sorry for the guy that froze the pass because he's every year they bring it up. It makes me look good, but it makes him look shit house. He must hate me, that Colin Brown. Anyway. I'll tell you what happened. They were shooting it across. Like someone took it and someone else took it, and they're going to the middle. And I said to Brian James, and I could see Les Johns coming up in the background, in the back line. And I said to Brian James, I said, come up, move up quick. He said, they're coming back to the blind. And so we sort of moved up together, and when Les come into the back line, he's yelled out, yes, or mine, or whatever. And Cole Brown, for some reason, was stuck in the back line. And he just threw the ball to Les Johns' voice. Not drawing me. Like if he'd have drawn me, I'd have tackled him and knocked him out of the plane. That Les Johns would have gone through the hole, and most probably, if Cootie wasn't there, he would have scored. Yeah. Anyway, as it turned out, he just threw it to Les's voice, and I thought myself when I moved up, I can catch this.
Yep.
But when I caught, I didn't think I'd have to run the whole field. I thought I'd be able to give it to Brian James or look where Mike Cleary was, but I just took off and away I went. And when I got over the 22-metre line, I could felt my hamstring go. But I think adrenaline kept me going.
Yep.
And then when I got over the try line, I scored, and then I was sort of happy, and everyone was shaking hands and clapping me on the head. And when I started walking back, I got to about the halfway line, and then it just tightened up. Then when I got behind the try line, I was just on half-time. I could hardly walk, and then the half-time bell went, and I started walking off. And I said to Sats, I said, I can't hardly walk, mate. Give us a handy. He said, don't show your crook. So I struggled off, and I said to Clive, I'm off. I'm out, mate. And he said, you can't come off. I said, I said, man, pull my hamstring. He said, Cleary's come off. He said, he's done his groin. He said, we can hide him, but we can hide you in the forwards, but we can't hide him on the wing. So they pushed Jimmy Lyle out to 5'8" and pushed Eric Sims out in the wing and brought up a 5'8" called Greg Norgard. And he said to me, you just go dummy half and put Walters, because Alan Walters was like a second rower anyway. And he said, put him back the second row, and when the scrums go down, you go back the second row, and he goes back up the hooker. Well, lo and behold, we done that, and we won the grand final. And after the game, Alan Walters goes to England, and I go down to clip Coogee, sit at Coogee Beach for the summer. Yeah.
The famous '69 grand final against Balmain that you touched on. South's loss, the Tigers' tactics to this day, still questionable.
Yeah.
Does time heal the pain?
No. You'd think so, but I still can't get over it. I mean, penalties 18-5, I think. We were the best side in the comp, and I don't think we're allowed to win that day. I know I shouldn't be saying things like that, but their tactics were good. They were good. I mean, Johnny Sattler was saying to Keith Page all day, make him get up, Keith, for Christ's sake. And he's saying, I'm not a doctor. They could be crook. And, they just kept laying. But one time now, there was 5 laying down when we got the ball, and we thought, come. And then it was good tactics. We should have thought of it ourselves when they had the ball. And there's only, as you realise, there's only one try scored in the whole game. We couldn't score because we weren't allowed to. And then they only scored the one in the second half there, because our defence was so good. But I thought a couple of times there we could have scored tries. But one time there, John O'Neill put me into space, and I ran about 40 metres, and I got inside Bob Smithies.
Yeah.
As soon as I got inside him, the whistle went, and I looked back, and Keith Page, I went back. I said, Keith Page, what's up? He said, you're offside. I said, I ran behind John O'Neill. He said, get onside.
Oh.
And then he penalised me another time for giving him cheek and what have you. And Cootie put me over under the post and was marginal. like the way they just now, there's no margin anymore. They just give you the try, don't
That's
they?
right.
Whatever, you know, and that they took that off us. Paul Sate in the second half when Bobby Moses played with a torn rib cartilage, and at half time the painkiller had wore off, and Clive said, "Oh, look, you better come off, Bob." He said, "I've got Sadie ready and fit and raring to go."
Yep.
So he put him in, and Sadie went from dummy half, and Page come around when all the Balmain players jumped on him, and you can see on video if you watch it, Page says no try, held up. Then when all the Balmains peel off him, Sadie gets up with the ball stuck under his chest. So and that was near the post, so there's another 5 points.
If you weren't around in 1969, Balmain's game plan, and they've admitted to it since, was simply lying down and just killing any rhythm Souths may have had. The Tigers won 11-2 in a huge upset and a very controversial game that's still talked about to this day. 12 months later, 1970 grand final, South Sydney and Manly. Bitter rivals at the time, both extremely physical sides, brutal. John Bucknell's role in the day, a punch to John Sattler that broke his jaw in 2 or 3 places, depending on who's telling the story, was just 3 minutes into the game. It ignited and it infuriated a Rabbitohs forward pack that I claim was as tough and is as tough as any pack that's ever played the game. John O'Neill, Gary Stevens and yourself went to war for a mate. Was it personal?
Oh, yeah, well, it was grand final too, it was kill or be killed.
Yeah.
And I was on the side of the ruck when Sats got smashed. And I could see what happened. Look, Sats used to wear a big boxing mouth guard.
Yep.
And if Johnny Buckner would have hit him just normally, like the force of the thing would have cushioned, the mouth guard would have cushioned the shock. But because he was so tall, he punched downwards.
Yep.
And rips Sats's jaw downwards as he punched him with all that force because he was a big guy.
Yeah.
And when he punched him downwards, everything just come apart. And the mouth guard was no good to him. And I looked at Sats when he got up from the ground, and I could see there was the bottom level of teeth, and there was the first floor of teeth. So he had the basement, and so John O'Neill came over and said, "You're right, mate." And he had a bit of blood was spitting out, and he said, "I think he's still a bit dazed." He said, what's going on?" And then we said, "We think you break your jaw, mate. You might have to go off." He said, "Oh, I'm not going off." So we said, "You broke your jaw, and he said, "No, I'm not going off. I'll be right. Somehow we got that out when he was talking, and we just said, "Okay, we'll just have to play around him." So we'll put the ball around him, over his head, behind him and whatever. And we come in at half time and he said, "I appreciate what you're doing." He said, "But give me the ball." He said, "Don't make me, look, Matt, I'm not involved in the game." He said, "Otherwise someone might have one of these,
Yeah.
So we said, "Okay, Sats, you want it? You're going to get it." So we were throwing the ball at him, and they knew he had a broken jaw. And they were smashing him around the head and all that. And he got up and played the ball, kept saying instructions, move it, let's come back to blind, all this type of stuff. And when the game was over and we won, everyone sort of jumped in the air and everyone knew he had a broken jaw. And I think all the press guys got hold of it.
Yep.
And in those days, the press were allowed into the dressing rooms.
Yeah.
And they were all coming in and we were all sort of around squirting champagne as you do after a grand final, or beer or drinking grog and whatever. And all the press guys were saying that Sats broke his jaw, because that night they were picking the Australian side to go to England, with the World Cup, and we knew Sats would have been captain. And we said, no, he's all right. And I don't know if you've been to the cricket ground down the other end. There used to be a bath in the corner.
Bath area. Yeah.
In the bath there, and Sats was in there, and he had the door closed. He got a guy called Johnny Martin while he's making his speech to go up there. He made the speech too, which was ironical. And then he said to Johnny Martin, "Go in and put that bath on for me." So he must have thought, "I'll get in there and I'll do what I've got to do in there with my jaw." So anyway, he's got in there and all the guys are saying, "John, how's your jaw?" And he's going, "Oh, I'm all right, boys. Yeah, I'll be out in a minute. You haven't broken, have you?" No, I'm all right. I'm just having a bath. I'll be out in a minute, boys. Anyway, Clive's come over and he said, "Oh, Sats," he said, "these guys are going to file their stories, by 6 o'clock or whatever it was in those days for the next day." And he said, They got to file their stories. You better come out. He said, "I'll come out in a minute." So all of a sudden the door opened. We all looked to see what was happening. And as Sats went to say, "Oh, how you going?" all the jaw fell apart again. So I said to Sats after, "What was you doing in there?" He said, "I was pushing it all back in." And it kept coming out. So he was pushing it on that side. He was pushing on the left side, the right side. And he was pushing in the middle so it all stayed together so he could get past the medical and get on the World Cup. And as soon as he said hello, it all just fell apart again, and they all rushed out. They said, he's broke his jaw, and they all rushed out to all their phones and all that type of stuff and ringing up, and that was the headlines. And yeah, poor bugger Sats, he was a tough bugger.
We hope you're enjoying the Bob McCarthy story. There's more to come. Make sure you're following us on social media, Twitter, Instagram and Facebook at The Andy Raymond, and subscribe to the podcast on whatever app you're currently listening on. That way, you won't miss a thing. Make sure you come back soon, legends. This episode is brought to you by our wonderful sponsors, Griffin Air Conditioning. Check them out at griffinair.com.au. Welcome back to Andy Raymond Unfiltered, the Legend series with Bob McCarthy. The story continues.
The South Sydney mantra. Don't show the pricks you hurt. That's how John described him remaining on the field that day. He played 77 minutes with a broken jaw. Is it the bravest thing you've seen on a field, or perhaps the craziest thing?
Oh, it was brave and crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, how we withstood that pain. But we always knew we had a pain sort of leverage. I remember the first year we played at Cumberland Oval in 1963. Sats was just down from Newcastle, and I'm an 18-year-old kid. And I was going in to get dressed at half time of the second grade for our first grade game, and Sats was standing signing some autographs. And I said, "How you going, mate?" He said, "Good." And as I looked at him, I saw that his hand was in plaster. I said, "What have you done?" And Sats in those days, after he came down and lived down here, he got a job at East Gardens, where East Gardens is now. Used to be with GMH's factory, with us to make the Holdens in New South Wales. And he worked on the assembly line, and he said, "You wouldn't believe last night." He said, I mishandled an engine, and it come down on my hand, and I broke my hand in so many places." And I said, "Oh, how long are you out for?" He said, "I'm playing today." I said, "You can't play with that on." He said, "No, I'll be right." So I thought, shook my head and went in, and I thought, he's away with the fairies, this bloke. Then when he come in, he's walked over because there's no doctors in those days. We used to have a medical box there with had bandages and scissors and all that type of stuff in it. And he walked over to the box and pulled out a pair of scissors, and he started cutting it off. And I remember
cutting the cast off,
and Michael Clear and Jimmy Lyle saying, "Look at Sats. It's in there. Tough bugger him." Anyway, cut the thing off, went out and played, come back in after the game, had a shower, went back to South Sydney Hospital and got it plastered up again. Till the next week. We knew then he was a tough hombre,
That 70 grand final, John Bucknell wouldn't last to half time. Kicked, maimed, bashed and assaulted. Different game.
Well, it was. Well, I got him a good one because he jumped into me. He tried to knee me he tried to get me in the head with his knees, and he jumped up into me, and I thought, geez, I made it easy. And then I just got him in the air, and then I speared him into the ground, and I think I broke his shoulder, and he went off, and then they brought on another player who played for Australia, Alan Thompson, so he was more as a better player as it was anyway. But Johnny, he made it easy for me by jumping into me. He tried to get me too with his knees, and he made it easy by jumping into me because took me the trouble of picking him up, and dumping him.
We spoke earlier about constant rule changes in rugby league. In 1967, it went from unlimited to 4 tackles. Just 4 years later, in 71, it went from 4 tackles to 6 tackles. Was it much of an adjustment?
It wasn't as quick. It was still willy-nilly. Because we all got brought up on throwing the ball around, at South. So it really didn't do much of us because we had 2 great wingers in Cleary and Michael Cleary was the Australian sprint champion, over 100 yards, and Brian James on the other wing, I think it was a North Sydney gift champion. So we had a couple of speedsters, and Michael was the Australian 100-yard champion because the day he broke the record, the Australian 100-yard record, they went metric. So his record is still there now. He's Australia's 100-yard champion
before the 100 metres.
Before the 100 metres come in.
Wow.
And then everyone thought that Ken Irvine was the fastest bloke because he held the world record over 60 metres.
Yeah.
But Mike Cleary raced him in 1963 at Wentworth Park for £1,000, and Cleary beat him from me to you.
Really?
And no one seems that. If you Google Cleary and Irvine in a sprint race, you'll see how far he beats him by. And I said to Michael before it, you reckon you'll beat him? He said, if I beat him out, he said, I've got him. And Michael just practiced that, getting out of the ruck, getting out of the blocks. And he got in front of him and he led him all the way and beat him. You have a look on, you can Google that.
I'm going to go and take a peek at that as soon as we're done.
And he, after that, when 64 the next year, a bloke called Bobby Hayes came out from America. He won the Olympic Games, and he was big. He was a big guy, 15, 16 stone. He was bandy. I think he was band. No, he was pigeon-toed. We said to Michael, "You can beat this bloke." He said, I should." He said, "Because I think he's got something wrong with him sexually." And we said, okay, so we went out and we watched him, and he smacked Mike. He beat Michael by about 10 metres.
Really?
Yeah, and then they found out that when he went and got checked out, he had some sort of disease with him that you get when you have sex.
Oh.
Yeah, so we beat him with that. I don't know if I can use that on your program.
Yeah, no, we can, but we might leave it there. And I hope he's back in the States with his disease.
Yeah, remember, he went to jail, didn't he? Billy, remember he's selling drugs over there, and he was.
There was a story to it post-career,
Bobby Hayes.
wasn't there?
Then when he came out, remember they paraded him around one of those grand final. What do they call them?
The parades,
Super Bowl. Yeah, they paraded him on the back of a car.
To mixed reaction, from what I remember.
Yeah,
a lot of people weren't overly thrilled with that.
Yeah.
Back to 71, field goals were reduced from 2 points to 1. It was 12 teams. Everyone played each other twice. The Rothmans medal was won by Dennis Pittard, and the Rugby League Week awarded Bob Grant their Player of the Year. So the South's halves were firing. It was also the year the New South Wales Rugby League imposed a TV ban on games to combat failing crowd numbers. So the grand final was actually the only game on television that year, and even that was on replay. That grand final, Souths against St George, they were no longer the team of experienced hardheads, but they were a youthful side that was evolving. What a decider that was. It's often overlooked when we talk about the great grand finals, but this was a beauty.
It was, yeah. Well, they had two great players in Billy Smith and Graham Langlands.
Yep.
And I think Jack Gibson just brought in all these tacklers. They weren't much good with the ball. There was Barry Beath, who was a good runner, and the wingers were quick.
Yep.
But he just brought all these defenders on, and they were just knocking each other out, trying to get hold of you. And we led early. I think it was 1-0 at half time, and we scored 2 quick tries straight after half time. Yep. And we thought, well, that's it. And then they just kept coming back at us, and we thought, here we go again. And lo and behold, we got to 11-10. And for some reason, I got a cramp, which a lot of guys get in grand finals, I suppose, with all the adrenaline pumping through you the night before and whatever. And Sats ran past me and said, we need you, Mac. And I was pulling my toe back but I said, be there in a second. And I got up because he said, get up. Within 2 seconds, I'm under the post. So I just got up and I could see where he was going. I could see Coot coming inside of him.
It was literally the last couple of minutes of the game to win it.
Yeah, and I was on the ground trying to get the cramp out. And then when he said, get up, Macca, we need you. If he hadn't said, get up, I'd have still been there still trying to get the cramp out. And then when I scored, I jumped in the air, and people always say, what'd you jump in the air for when you scored? I said, well, I knew it'd be another 40-odd years before we win another grand final. So.
A wonderful era. You were born in South Sydney. You played as a South junior. You lived in the area. Yet after 13 seasons, you were told to move on. So Canterbury it was for 2 years.
Yeah, I was.
Did that break your heart?
Oh, easy. Yeah. Well, I went to Charlie Gibson and I said, look, the contract was up. And I said, what are you going to do about me? He said, oh, well, you're not as good as you used to be, so we're not going to give you as much. I said, oh, well, that's up to you. I said, oh, look, don't worry about it. I had 13 years. I was pretty happy. And I was training over at Giles' gym over here at Coogee, and with Gary Stevens, he had it, him and John O'Neill had a lease on it with Les Motto, and I used to train there every day, or everyone used to train there. And one day there after I finished training, I was sitting out the front, and I could see this bloke coming along the path. I thought to myself, geez, this bloke looks like Peter Moore. But then the closer and closer he got, I thought, no, that couldn't be Peter Moore, because anyone knows Peter Moore. He had the scotch in one hand and a cigarette in the other.
That's right.
And the furthest thing he'd be would be to a gym, you know. And it was he coming towards me. And anyway, as he come over, I said, "Oh, you going, Pete? You want to have a sauna bath or something?" He said, "No, I come to see you." I said, "Oh, yeah, what for?" He said, "Oh, I want you to come and play with Canterbury." I said, "No," because I couldn't play against South. He said, "Oh, we've got this team of young kids. We've got all these Hughes and Mortimers and what have you." He said, "We just need a figurehead there, and we just thought you'd be the man." You know, I said, "Oh, mate, no, I couldn't play for South. I could play against South." So he rang me a couple of times and said, "You change your mind?" I said, No, mate, I'm sweet." Gary Stevens said to me, "You should still play." He said, "You still look fit and all that." And I was 34 or 35. I said, "Oh, no." And then Judy said, "Why don't you just have a go and see what you think, you know?" And so I rang up Bullfrog. I said, the money was pretty good. And I said to Bullfrog, "Look, I'll give that a go, Bullfrog." I said, "How many years is it?" He said 2. I said, "Oh, geez, I don't know if I could squeeze out 2. I said, "But yeah, okay, I'll agree to that." And as soon as I signed and got home, phones rang, and there's Charlie Gibson on the phone.
Griffin Air Conditioning offers the highest quality of air conditioning sales and service across the Sydney metropolitan area, providing installation and maintenance to commercial, domestic and industrial customers. Working with this team, you'll be guaranteed the latest services, technology and developments in the industry. Visit griffinair.com.au and tell them we sent you for a cool deal.
He said, "Have you signed with the Bulldogs?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, well, I'll come around with the contract and we'll match their offer." I said, "No, Charlie." I said, "You're offering me a contract now?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Look, you've been playing on my loyalty for the last 6 weeks." I said, "No, I've agreed to terms with Canterbury." He said, "But you haven't signed, have you?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, they'd break the contract." I said, "I don't care what they would have done." I said, "It's my word and I'm not going to break my word." I said, "You played my loyalty for 6 weeks and it's all over." So I went there with Canterbury and had a couple of good seasons with them until I done my shoulder. And lo and behold, the next year when Gibbo came over, Terry Parker rang me up. He was in charge then and said, "Oh, we want you over at South." I said, "Oh, they told me 2 years ago I was too old." I said, I must have got young. I must have got that youthful vigour over there at Canterbury. And they said, "Oh, we just want you back." And then Jack rang up and said, "We want you here." And I said, "Oh, but there's a bit of history there." And he said, "Don't worry about that." He said, "We'll change all that." Then he said, "Oh, and by the way, you won't be captain." I said, oh yeah, you're going to make captain?" He said, "I want to make George." I started laughing. I said, "George?" I said, "George won't be on the field that many times." He said, "No, he's going to change his ways and all that type of stuff." I said, "Look, I don't care. I just want to wear the South Sydney jumper again, you know." And quite a few games there until I'd done my shoulder and had to go the bloody thing wired up again. I missed 11 weeks.
Something was building pretty special at the Bulldogs. As you said, Peter Moore sold you on the vision that the Mortimer boys and the Hughes boys were coming through. What wonderful names in rugby league. But 1976, some would say one of the great missed chances. Parramatta and Manly played out the grand final. Many reckon the Bulldogs were actually the best side and by a long way. Fair call or not?
I thought we'd win the comp that year. We had a couple of pommies. They called Mike lock forward, he died. Eric Hughes was in the centres. He was quick. He come from St Helens and he was a Pommy international. The other bloke was Mike. His name just escapes me. Anyways, he's a good ball handler, and he went. When we beat, I think we beat St George pretty easy in the semi-final. I think I scored 3 and someone else, and we won by a pretty big score. And when Rod Reddy right on full time need this Mike. He came out with a Pommy sides in 74. What's his name? I'll think of it. But anyway, he's
going to annoy you until you.
He's need him in the head, and he's cut him open. So we've gone to train on the Tuesday night, and we're playing Manly. I thought, well, we give it to Manly during the year, and we give it to Parramatta during the year. So I thought, well, it's only a matter of just going through the motions again and just playing tough, and we'll be sweet. So get to train on the Monday night, and Malcolm Cliff's got the side up in the thing, and I said, "Where's Mick Adams?"
Yep.
Mick Adams. I said, "Where's Mick Adams?" He said, he's gone back to up Canada. I said, "What for?" He said, "Well, his head's got 30 stitches in his head." I said, "He can wear headgear." I said, "He'll be right." He said, "No, he's took off." I said, "No, let me talk to him." He said, "He's gone." Then I saw his Pommy mate, Eric, and I said, "Eric, where's your mate?" He said, "Oh, weak bastard." I said, he could have wear headgear. We don't play for another 7 more days. I said, well, it might have been all right, you know. Because when I played one year there, I had a bad scar on my head.
Yeah.
And Clive said, you got to play front row this week. I said, I can't play front row. I said, my head will friggin' open up.
Yeah.
He said, I just wear headgear. And I said, no, I won't do that. I said, I went up and saw Ernie McQuillan in his gym up there at Erskineville.
Yep.
And I went and
The
saw
old
him.
boxing coach.
Yeah. I said, Ernie, can you, well, he trained all them champions, all the Australian champions. I said, mate, can you fix my head up? He said, what's up? I said, oh, my head's got a big hole in it. I got about 30 stitches went up into my head. I said, can you fix this up? I've got to play on Sunday. And Clive has been playing the front row. He said, yeah, come over the day of the game. So I went up there and he put all that skin up, what do you call it? All that, he patched it all up and put all that.
Was it like the adrenaline?
Yeah, it was all plastic sort of skin and all that type of stuff. He patched it up and then he put all this thing over it. And he said, whatever you do, he said, that won't open again. And I said, oh, good as gold. So going back to that game, I went down, I was playing against Paul Kahn. And with first scrum, we both headbutted each other, and there's blood all over the joint. And I've gone like that, and I could feel my thing was tight as a drum, and he had blood all over him, and I thought it was him. And Paulie Sage's gone past and said, you better go off, mate, get sewed up. I said, it's not me. I said, I'm all right. Look, he said, well, you got blood all in your head. I said, that's from Kahn. I said, I'm right, don't worry about it. So we packed out a scrum, bang again, and he come off at half time, and the doctor said, geez, you better come in here, Bob. He said, you need a few more stitches. I said, no, it's all patched up. He said, it's patched up there where you got it patched up. He said, but from there backwards, he said, it's all opened up again.
Oh, no.
So Ernie McCullum rang me up. He said, didn't that work? I said, mate, where you patched it up? I said, it worked till there. I said, but it split from the other side.
Oh. Injury called your career short at 251 games, 119 tries, and a field goal. That seems out of place. When and where was the field goal?
Well, you wouldn't believe, I just kicked 2. There was another one in the World Cup in 1972 in Perpignan in France.
Yep.
We got to 20 all or something, and I put one over, but they scored a try to sort of knock us off. But we played at the cricket ground. I think it was 22 all with a couple of minutes to go. And I thought, oh, this game's been a good game. So they had Coote and Jim Morgan who had come across from us, and and they've developed into a pretty good side. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm not going to freaking cop a draw out of this.
Yeah.
A minute to go. And I've gone into dummy half, and Cootie and all them from East to sing that, what Sims? And I'm saying, Eric, you're right, Eric. So I had no intention to pass to Eric. I thought, I'm going to just stand aside and just go whack it over because it's right in front.
Yep.
So I'm going, Eric, get back deeper. And I think all those East blokes going to fall for the trap, and then Cootie at the last minute said, watch out for Macca, because he'll run. Anyway, when I saw Cootie come up, because he tried to smother me, you know how tall he was. He was 6'4" or 5. By the time he put his arms in the air, he's about 10 foot. So I had to sort of have to get hold of the ball, and I thought, oh, geez, you're going to bugger this up. So I had to get it and sort of loop it. I looped it over his head. It went that high that it kept back thinging, and the power kept it going and went over the try line, over the goalpost. And Cootie looked at him like that. He said, how'd you kick that? And I said, I don't know. I said, but read the Morris paper.
Love it. Every time you talk about one of your teammates, and I look at this South Sydney side or picture it in my mind, I think salary cap. You're just not fitting this football side in a salary cap.
Well, you couldn't fit the second grade side under the salary cap.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was that hot. And then a lot of them finished up going elsewhere, like Ray Brennigan, Arthur Brennigan, Bob Moses, John O'Neill, Ron Coote, Jimmy Morgan, Alwyn Walters, Dennis Pittard to Parramatta, me and Gary Stevens to Canterbury. Yep. I mean, that was two sides.
Yeah.
That they had to get out of the joint because, they just couldn't afford us. And
amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like the St George side way back. I think Reg Gadget and blokes, I remember saying to Reg, how much you get when you first play? Because I got 800 quid. He said, that's all I got. I said, that all you got? He said, no, well, I'm going to give everyone 800 quid.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said it would have gone broke.
You're listening to Andy Raymond Unfiltered, the Legends series. We have corporate and private sponsorship packages available. You set the terms. For further information on how you can become part of the team, go to the website andyraymondunfiltered.com.au and hit the sponsorship tab.
Did the fact injury ended your career and you didn't get the choice on when you wanted to finish hurt?
Well, I played the next year with East for half a game in a trial match. Remember the old pre-season comps?
Yeah.
And Bozo rang me up and he said, I need a run in second rower. I said, Baz, I'm 35 going on 36. He said, don't let the press retire. I said, mate, I'm 36.
Yeah.
He said, will you come over and just train and all that? I said, yeah, right. So I went over and I was winning all the sprints. And remember that Nautilus thing come in there, the Nautilus machine?
Yeah.
And we had the Nautilus machine up there in Bondi Junction. I was the strongest bloke on that and all this. And I'm thinking, this is not right. I win in everything and I'm 35 going on 36. I said, it's not going to work out, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, he said, just have one game. And we played against Balmain at the cricket ground. And there was holes everywhere. And instead of running like I normally did, I was moving the ball on. Okay. And I come off at half time and I said to Bozo, it's all over, mate. He said, don't let the press retire. I said, Bozo, how old are you? He said, you know how old I am. He said, I'm 2 years younger than you. I said, well, you retired 2 years ago. Let me retire. That was it. So there's a photo of me running around with an East jumper on.
You haven't burnt it?
No, well, sometimes people show it to me. And because there's a bit of rivalry there, I just look past it, you know. I hope Nick Politis is not looking at this because Nick's a good mate of mine.
What was it like, even briefly, venturing over the other side of Sydney to the east and putting that jersey on?
Well, it was just sort of different because I remember when I first came in, there was no rivalry. I mean, the rivalry came in when they took Coote and our juniors, like they took Bunny Riley and Russell Fairfax. Fairfax played here for Laperouse and Alexandria Rovers. Yep. When they were kids, and and Jim Morgan and Alwyn Walters, they took all these players. I think the rivalry became then, in my estimation, and because I remember way back when I came in, they didn't win a game there for a couple of years, so there was no rivalry. And I don't know what happened way back, but in my 14 years at South, it was only when the Coote sort of problem went in, and know what happened to him when he went to East. Someone from South rang him up or sent him a letter and said. Ron, they said, when you played for South, we used to love you there, and we had a little rabbit, and we called him Cootie. And he thought, oh, that's very nice. And then they said, but when you went to the Roosters, we finished up cooking him and eating him. So you'd say that's rivalry, wouldn't it? There was hatred there. The poor little rabbit. He's thinking, oh, they're going to give me a cuddle tonight. And then all of a sudden he's in the oven.
He ends up in the pot. Mate, you played representative footy between 1969 and 1974, 11 games for New South Wales, 15 for Australia over 2 World Cups. In the blue jersey, it wasn't state of origin, it was interstate football. Was interstate football important at the time, or was it a drink and a couple of days away?
Oh, it was both. It was a drinkathon. And people used to think that, because there wasn't much TV on back then, people used to think that we used to thrash them, but they were always competitive. When the crowd come out, they lifted, and we'd only beat him in the last 10, 15 minutes when Bozo, myself, and Cheng or Cootie or whatever, we got the ball and they ran out of nick. Yep. Then we'd run right in the last 10 minutes, and people would say, oh, New South Wales won 34-10 or something. But up until then, it might have been about 12-10, and they were punching the Christ out of us.
Wow.
But they were always competitive. And you know, there was one thing about it when you did get big for New South Wales. It was a drinkathon, because we used to go up in on the Monday, get picked Sunday night. Monday night, have the medical at the Leagues Club. Go down to the bar and wait for everyone to do their medical and have a couple of beers. And the bus would come, take us to the airport. We'd have a couple of beers in the bar at the airport. Get on the plane, drink on the plane from there to Brisbane. Go from Brisbane to the hotel. In those days, we used to stay in hotels, not like the luxury things now, like in pubs.
You stayed in the pub?
In a pub. Yeah, and we'd stay in a pub, and actually the guy would keep the bar open for us.
Yeah.
We'd have a couple of beers there. Then the next day we'd train, and then we'd play on the Wednesday night, and then on the Thursday, what was the best day? We used to bus to come and pick us up and take us down to a guy at the Miami Hotel. He's a lovely bloke. I can't think of his bloody name. I think he played for Queensland. Anyway, we used to go down to his pub, and he'd give us schooners all day and steak sandwiches. And Arthur Beetson broke the record. He one year, I think it was 69 or 70, he had, I think it was 9 or 11 steak sandwiches. And that was steak with eggs, salad and chips.
The full go.
He had the full go, had 9 of them, and then we'd come back from there, back to Brisbane, and go up to bed and go to what's something. One year there with Arthur at the 9, we're getting off the bus, and he said, "Is anyone going out for tea?" But Arthur he wasn't just a beer drunk, he was a food drunk. He just would sit there and he used to watch everyone's food, and he'd be saying, "Don't you want your the potatoes. And you'd say, Arthur, go away, will you? Piss off. And he'd say to Cheng, you eating your carrots and that? And he said, don't you want them? And Cheng's going, "Yeah, get away, Beats, and your big heap, and all that. And he'd look at Bozo, and all he'd do was parading around the table to see who was going to leave something over for him. And he was a food drunk. I remember one year there in 1970. Can I keep going?
Please do.
In 1970, they put us out here at Cronulla, and in a pub at Cronulla at the end of the mall.
Yep.
There was a pub. I don't know, it might be called the Cronulla Hotel. I'm not too sure. Anyway, we're playing cards this night. We're playing England, the last test, the deciding test. And Arthur Summons was the coach, and he's gone upstairs, and we're sort of playing cards. You could see everyone was happy and whatever, having a couple of beers and playing cards. Then Arthur's coming in, and he could hear his belly roaring. It was like thunder. He said, I'm starving. He said, go down the road and get something to eat. And he said, everything's closed. He said, I've been down He said, I've been down there. I've been up and down. He said, there's no shops open. We said, mate, we'll be right. Ellen Walter said, look, I'll get you something in a minute, because Ellen was a pastry cook. He was a chef. He said, I'll get you something in a minute. We just wait we finish playing. So we finished playing, and he said, okay, let's go down to the dungeon. So we're going down into the kitchen, down in the basement.
Yeah.
And and Arthur said, see, I told you it was locked. He told us the fridge was locked. And we looked over, and there was this big industrial fridge with these two big bars across like that, like in a cross.
Yeah.
Locking the thing up with these two big locks on it.
So no one could get in.
So no one could get in. Arthur said, see, I told you. He said, and he could hear the belly still rumbling. He's going, oh, geez, I've got to have something to eat, And then we said, mate, just hang on a sec. No one Walter said, look, everyone just go and get a knife out of the thing and use it as a screwdriver. So there's four of us and we've all gone bang and pull the screws out and pull the two big bars off it. And then we opened the doors up, and Arthur was like a kid at Christmas time. He went, oh, look at all the chicken and all the eggs and and the ham. There was everything. And Arthur was there, and you can see him sitting there. And I think he had a 10-egg omelette. He used to love 10-egg omelettes. And plus all the bacon, and he had all the chickens. And when we'd finished, we'd put it all back up there again and screw the doors back on.
Pretend nothing had happened.
No one knew what was happening. We used to say to Arthur Summons, Arthur said, Arthur's worry. He said, sometimes he's cranky and sometimes he's not. We said, don't worry, everything's right. As long as he plays football, just let him do what he does,
We hope you're enjoying the Bob McCarthy story. There's more to come. Make sure you're following us on social media, Instagram, Facebook and Twitter at The Andy Raymond. And subscribe to the podcast on whatever app you're currently listening on, because that way you won't miss a thing. Make sure you come back soon, legends. Welcome back to Andy Raymond Unfiltered, the Legends series with Bob McCarthy. This amazing story continues.
Before we talk Test footy, we've got to talk about your omission from the 67 Kangaroo Tour. The best back rower in the game, but a back rower who was playing on the edges as instructed by club coach. Is that what cost you?
Yeah, well, they said while I was out there I wasn't doing much defence, but they did watch me pretty good because I didn't stay there all the time. I was only there for a while, and then when they got the ball, I creeped back into the forwards, and we had a thing there with Bobby Moses. Like I was a bit faster than Bobby, and Bobby got stuck in the forwards. That the game plan was for me just to stay in the centre, so Bobby works his way back, and I work my way back in again. Yep. So I could still hold up my end, and he could hold up the forward end, and. Apparently that's what happened, and a couple of years later, well, it wasn't so much me. They didn't take Arthur Beetson away or Bobby Fulton. And there's two immortals and one good-looking bloke.
That's right.
And 3 years later, I remember Arthur, the head Henry Porter, chairman of selectors, come out and said we made a mistake leaving those three behind, but they still won the Ashes anyway. But it's funny, we all finished up captain Australia. Yeah. And they did admit that it was they'd done the wrong thing, but. I remember when they went over there, Reg Gasnier said to Ronnie Coote, first game he played, he said, get out in the centres with me and stop this Neil Fox. So he said, get out here in the centres with me. You tackle him and I'll save myself up for running,
Was captaining your country your standout memory of wearing green and gold, or was there something
that
else?
was great. I would have loved to have captained South to a premiership, but Sat said that honour. And Captain Australia was great, although it only lasted half a game. They got me in the back with me shoulder, and half time Cheng said, your shoulder all right? I said, yeah, it doesn't feel good. I said, I think they sort of held me up, and I think Brian Lockwood or someone done one of those flying leaps they do in wrestling.
Yep.
And he come in, he dived into me back with his knee. He's brought his knee up into me back, and I could feel something move. There was a clunk. I thought, I feel right, and went in at half time. And Cheng said, "You sure you're all right?" I said, "Mate, I'll be sweet." He said, "I got Madison over there." I said, "I know, mate." I said, "But I'm sweet." And straight after half time, Arthur's put me through a hole, and 60 yards up down was the try line. The way I've gone. And I'm thinking I'm home, and all of a sudden, I think Roger Millwood or someone come from behind and ankle tapped me. Mm. And as I hit the down, I've gone bang, bang, and I bounced over the try line, and shoulder popped straight out the first time. And I remember Bozo picking me up, and he's saying, "Oh, good on you, Mac, good on you, Mac." I said, "Oh, watch out, me shoulder." He said, "You're all right." He said, "You're only winded." I said, "Winded?" I said, "What's this here?" My shoulder was sticking out opposite where it should have been. Oh. And he said, "Oh, my God." And then Alf Richards come on, and he said, "I can't put it in, Mac. You'll have to." No, he said, he pulled it in. And then we went back in the game, and he said, "You're all right?" I said, "We're all right now." I said, "Good as gold." And then Arthur was getting pushed around by my front row in the scrum, and he said to me, "Quick, get me up, Macca, get me up. I'm collapsing." And I sort of put my shoulder, I had it under his arm, under his bum sort of thing.
Yep.
So it's still tight. And then when he was losing his power, I had to put my arm around him that way, and then weight come through, and all of a sudden it clunked out again. I remember going back and pulling back through the scrum, and Paulie Sate was locking. He was saying, "Where are you going?" I said, "Get out of the way." Yeah. And I've got there, and I'm on the ground. I'm trying to cluck it back in again. It wouldn't go in. And then Alf come on. He said, "You have to come off, Macca." He said, "It's you're in spasm." I said, "Oh, what does that mean?" He said, "Oh, we'll have to get you off and relax you." And there was no needles or anything in those days. So we went off, and then they got this little pommy doctor, and he was about as big as Jimmy Cassidy, and he'd been drinking scotch all day, and he's up on my shoulder like a monk, and he's got his shoulder, he's got his knee in me here, and he's trying to pull my shoulder. And after about 2 minutes, I had tears in my eyes, and I said, "Doc," I said, "do me a favour." I said, "Get off me." He said, "You're in spasm, lad." I said, "I don't give a fuck what I'm on." I said, "Doc, get off me." Anyway, they took me to hospital, and Greg Pearce was the duty boy, and he had to come with me to hospital, and we got to hospital, and there's this big queue. Apparently in those days there was a big compo thing going on in England. People going in for a sore toe to get compos and cut fingers and whatever, and there's a big queue of all these West Indians and Indian people all, but they had to get in the queue. And I said, "Go up the front and get me in." I tell him I've got a dislocated shoulder, and I'm still in my gear, football boots and my gear and all that. And he's gone up there, and he came back, he said, "No," he said, "They said you got to wait your turn." I said, I waited, and I said, "Mate." And anyway, the game was over, and we didn't know. And then Charlie Gibson come running in and said, "How are you going?" I said, "I'm still in the queue." He said, "You've been waiting here all this long." It was about 2 hours. I said, "Yeah, mate." I said, "Charlie, go and fix this up, mate. I'm going to go and jump under a bus." Yeah. I can't stand the pain because everything was torn. All the muscles are torn, all the tissues. Anyway, he come back and started swearing, "Where's this and where's that?" And they took me off and pulled me into a little room, give me a needle, knocked me out. And when I woke up, it's all strapped up. Shoulders all strapped up with all this bandages, So I thought, "Oh, thank God for that." So I've gone back to the hotel at, I think we stayed that year. I think we're in Bradford anyway. Going back to the hotel, and all the boys were all celebrating. No, Huddersfield, the George Hotel, where the league was originated from. And I've come back, and all the boys were all drinking around the bar there. And Lurch saw me, Big John O'Neill. He said, "Oh, Mac, you all right?" I said, "I'm all right, mate. Yeah, good as gold." And he said, "I'll run a bar for you upstairs." And I said, "Oh, thanks, mate." I said, "Oh, no, stay here. I'll be right." He said, "No, I'll run the bar for you." So we've got up there, and he's ran the bath. There's only one bath on each floor, by the way. That was from
shared
so there wasn't much water going around. So anyway, he's got the bath there, and he said, "Jump in." And I said, "All right." So anyway, I've jumped in, and he's washing all my face because one arm's all tied up. You know what I mean? He's washing my face and washing my arm. That's good. Washing under my arm and down that. Then he's come down to my legs, and then I'm thinking, "Oh, this is not going to look very good." And then he's come up and he's washed my legs, and he's come up to my thighs and all that type of stuff. And I thought, "Oh, Jesus, this is nice." And then all of a sudden he got the face flannel and threw it in my face and said, "I'm not that good a mate." I said, "Oh, Lurch." I said, "You had me friggin' worried then." When he's coming towards the crown jewels, I thought, "Oh, my God, this is going to be nice."
love
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
How's the body now at 70-something years of age?
Oh, well, I've had 2 hip replacements. I've had a knee replacement. I've had a back operation. So other than that, I'm all right. But
What's day-to-day living like? Is there a pain there?
oh yeah, but my ankles. I done my ankles in France in 1972, the World Cup. I don't know if you see it on video there. Arthur Beetson puts me through a hole, and I'm running down to score a try against England, and all of a sudden I disappeared off the face of the earth. Apparently, the groundsman that morning for the water sprinklers didn't put the top back on again. So when I'm running, I'm going down the hole where the tap is. And luckily for me, as I've gone down, Bozo raced up alongside and said, "When you're ready," and I give the ball to him, and he raced over and scored. So when I got up, I said to Alf Richards, he said, "Geez, your ankle's up." And he said, "Didn't you strap your ankles?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Look at the size of it." I said, "Well, mate, you better strap your thing up." Anyway, he strapped it up with the outside my boot. Anyway, when we come off we finished up getting beaten, I stayed on the field because I didn't want to come off. I stayed on the field. That's when I kicked that field goal.
Okay.
Anyway, I come off and Alf's taken the stuff off my boot, and then he said, "You saw you strapped your ankles?" I said, "Yeah." And then he pulled my sock off. All the strapping I had on me all peeled off the glue. So the force of the trauma, my leg went down, and I was plus a 16-12 or something, 16-10. The force of that just ripped the whole bandage off the glue on my leg. So I was out for the trip. My leg just blew up, and that was
Tour over.
Tour over, and I watched remember the final was 12-all, and they won on the countback because of that game, and
the coaching bug, some say it's addictive. Was it for you? Brisbane Souths in 80, 81, 82, 3 grand finals, 1 premiership, courtesy of a try that included Chris Phelan, Mal Meninga and Mickey Reardon.
Yeah, I enjoyed myself up in Queensland. I was working for Nightingale Chemicals at the time, and down here I was their public relations guy. Like I was going around for all the reps in the area, getting them into all the pubs for all the cleaning gear and all the clubs and all that type of stuff. They used to use my name, and they had a pretty successful sort of coup with that. And they said, "Oh, will you go to Queensland and help the reps up there?" Because people knew me up there, and they wouldn't know me in Western Australia or Victoria. And I said, "Yeah, I'll do the trip." So I've gone up there, and one of the last calls, I said, "Well, let's go into the Brisbane hotel."
Yep.
Gary Borkin that owned it, I said, "I'm a good mate of his. Go in there and get all his business," because he was the biggest pub in Brisbane.
Yep.
So we're going in there, and all this frivolity going on, and I saw all these footballers in. I thought, "Oh, what's going on?" And they said, "Oh, this is the South football team. They just got beaten in the grand final yesterday by Valley," and just reminiscing. And then the president came over, a bloke called Tony Tester came over and said, "Oh, you Bob McCarthy?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You any good at coaching?" Because their coach was Wayne Bennett.
Yep.
I said, "I don't know. I only just retired last year." They said, "Oh, there's a job there if you want it." I said, I don't make deals in pubs. I said, "Ring me tomorrow if you want to talk." Because I had no intention of coaching anyone. I just finished playing, and trying to set up in Queensland for all these reps. And the next day he rang me and he said, we'll give you $25,000 a year for 3 years, for 2 years. And I thought, $25,000? They said, yeah. I said, oh, Jesus Christ. No one in Sydney was getting that.
Yeah.
So I said, I'll think about it. He said, ring me tonight. And I rang him the night, and I said, "Oh, look, I'm thinking about that after." He said, "Look, we'll make it 3." I said, I couldn't come up for 2 years.
Yep.
He said, "We'll make it 3." Just like that. And I said, "Okay, you got me." So I rang Judy up and I said, "You're coming to Queensland." She said, "Oh, we come for a holiday." I said,
"No.
We come there for 3 years." She said, "What for?" I said, "I'm going to coach up there. I'm going to get 25 grand a year for 3 years." She said, "Jesus Christ."
You're listening to Andy Raymond Unfiltered, the Legends series. We have corporate and private sponsorship packages available. You set the terms. For further information on how you can become part of the team, go to the website andyraymondunfiltered.com.au and hit the sponsorship tab.
Anyway, so we come back and away we went and got all the players together and we made sure that everyone trained together for Tuesday night.
Yep.
There was 5 grades up there. Then there was first grade, second grade, third grade, under 21s, and an open grade, like blokes that just couldn't make it.
Yep.
And didn't want to
almost
put
like
the
an
effort.
A grade.
A grade, yeah. So we had 5 comps, and I said everyone's going to train here for Tuesday with me. and we'll put them through. We had 3 or 4 captains, and
Yep.
some would go and do defence, and then some do running with the ball, and some would do this scrummage and whatever. Backs would do sprints with the sprint coach. Then they'd move around, and then for Thursday night they went to their respective coaches.
Okay.
So, which they'd never ever done before.
Yep.
So over that 4 years I was there, we won 11 premierships in all grades, and up until I went there, they'd won a comp since 1952 in any grade, and they had Wayne Bennett, Harry Bath coaching. They had Brian Briggs from England. They brought all these coaches out and couldn't win a comp. We went up there and just got them a fit and just done a basic what they'd done in Sydney, and all these premierships come. And then when he started paying me in dollar notes, I said to Judy, I think I'm gone here at the club. She said, why? She said, well, they're paying me in dollar notes. And she said, well, you better ask what's going on. And I went and saw Tony. I said, Tony, haven't you got any money the next year? He said, well, your sentence broke. I said, well, didn't you budget for everything? He said, no, we only budget for you. We only budget for first grade. We didn't budget for all these other grades that you've won.
Wow.
And we're going to give them $20 each, or 20, whatever it was back then, 30 or 40, $50 a game. We didn't budget for them. And they won all these grades. That means they kept winning every week since he said, we're broke. So I said, oh, all right. And anyway, I got a job on Channel 7 up there.
Yep.
With David Fordham, and I used to do the rugby league show with him of a Sunday.
Yes.
And I just done that. Then I'd done with John McCoy, we call the main games from Ling Park.
Yep.
So I just give coaching away. Then I had a camping shop in the valley, and Ron McCullough came in there one day and said, oh, will you coach Brisbane? I said, oh, no, I couldn't coach Brisbane. No, he wanted to coach Queensland. I said, no, I couldn't coach Queensland. He said, oh, why? I said, oh, New South Wales bloke.
Yeah.
He said, well, Graham Lowe's. No, that's right. He said, well, Graham Lowe's interested. I said, I don't care what Graham Lowe's doing. I said, no, I can't do it. Anyway, he put Graham Lowe in, and he said, well, you coach the Brisbane side.
The Panasonic Cup in 84.
I said, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And we won that.
Yeah.
And
one of the great upsets. That was.
Yeah. Oh, well,
one of the great stories.
Yeah. Anyway, lo and behold, 1987, the guys from Porky Morgan, they get the Broncos side up. And they said, well, you'd be interested in coaching them. I said, oh, yeah, for sure. Said, you're going to have all these Lewises and all them blokes? I said, yeah. I said, oh, I'll coach them. So they said, you got the job. So I met Porky down at, there's a hotel in the bottom of, in Brisbane on the river there where the sort of Hyde Park is sort of thing. There's a hotel in there. And Gary Borkin rang me up he was one of the directors. He said, oh, you come and Porky wants to have a talk to me before you with the Broncos thing. I said, yeah, good as gold. And I remember he was sitting there and he's mopping up his eggs with his toast. He said, how will you handle Wally Lewis? And I said, not a problem. I said, I coached him a couple of years ago. I said, no problem. We won the comp and all that.
Yep.
He said, okay, you got the job. Jumped in the thing and away he went on his plane because he was doing that movie with Paul what is it? Crocodile Dundee. He was
Paul Hogan, of
Paul
course.
Hogan.
Yeah.
He was setting that all up.
Okay.
So he's took off, and so I was ring up Bruce Hatcher, and he was now the chairman of the Rugby League in Queensland. He was an accountant. I said, Bruce, I said, well, you get a contract up for me. I got this new Broncos job. He said, yeah, good as gold. Then I worked back to the shop in the valley, and I was working there that afternoon, and he got a phone call from Bruce. He said, you sure you got this valley Broncos job? I said, yeah, why? He said, well, I manage Wayne Bennett too, and he said he's got it. So I rang up Gary Borkin from the Brisbane Hotel. I said, mate, what's going on? I said, have I got this job or not? He said, you wouldn't believe it. He said, Porky's bumped into Jack Gibson at the airport, and he said, who would you have out of McCarthy or Bennett as coaches? He said, oh, Mac is untried, and Bennett's just played in the grand final with Canberra. So he said, okay. Anyway, he said, so let's give the job to Bennett. And I said, oh, well, he can friggin' have it. Anyway,
without telling you?
Yeah. And I thought, oh, well, that's the way it is. And then, lo and behold, then a month later, Bullfrog rings me up, and he says, we've got this new job, mate, coming out of the Gold Coast. He said, I'm going to be the secretary manager. Johnny Settler's going to be an owner, Bob Hagan and Peter Gallagher and all that, and all these names off. I said, oh, yeah. And I said, he said, and I'm going to be the secretary. And I said, you got any players this year? I'm bringing up Steve Mortimer, Chris Mortimer, and someone else, Steve Folkes or something like that. And I said, oh, that's good. I said, but who else you got? He said, that's it. And I said, they play in a couple of months. This was about the end of October. Anyway, Sat screamed me up. He said, will you take the job? And I said, mate, you got no players. I said, it's too hard. I said, with Brisbane, I said, the side's there. We just picked the Queensland side. And he said, oh, mate, you can do us a favour and all that. Anyway, finally relented. I said, oh, yeah, okay, I'll take it up. Pick up the paper next day, and Bullfrogs, he was just using the Gold Coast in get more money out of Canterbury. And he re-signed with Canterbury and
kept the Mortimers.
Kept the Mortimers and all that. Yeah. So I said, okay, who we got now? And Bobby Hagan said, well, we got no one. So I said, oh, that's good. So what are we going to do? And they said, well, we'll have to go and get all these players. I said, well, where are you going to get them from? They said, oh, well, there's a few down here that, that's got promise and all that. I said, mate, you want to win games, don't you? You got to win games to get people in.
Yep.
I said, you got to go and buy some names. And they said, well, all the names are all taken. Wally and all them are all gone and whatever. And they said, oh, we've got Chris Close was keen to come in and Micah Eden and all that. And they said, we might get that Ron Gibbs. And I said, oh, yeah. I said, okay, make an appointment. We'll go down and see him. So they booked the Hilton Hotel in Pitt Street there, with one that got bombed. We went down there and met him, and I remember saying, they said, oh, well, Ronnie Gibbs. I said, we'd love to get this Gibbs bloke. I said, he's not a bad player. And when the others all agreed, and Billy Johnson agreed, and they said, I said, how much will I offer this Ron Gibbs? And they said, offer him $250,000 for 3 years. I said, geez, that's a good contract. So I said to Ronnie, we met in there, and I said, Ron, mate, there's $83,000 a year for 3 years. And he's saying, he said, I'm at Manly, I'll win another comp if I stay at Manly, and if I stay with Manly, I'll play for Australia this year. I said, mate, it's $83,000 a year. And he went, yeah, I know. I said, you're not getting that much at Manly. I said, no, I know you're not even getting half that much. He said, oh, look, I can't. He had all these excuses. And I said, mate, well, look, I'll just have to give the $250,000 to someone else. And he went, what $250,000? And I thought, hello, the 83 a year didn't mean a thing to him.
Yeah.
He didn't add them up. And he said, what $250,000? And I said, it was like catching the fish, and I'm reeling him in. I said, mate, it'll be all there for you as soon as you sign a contract. Well, he broke my arm getting the pen off me. So we got him, and then we got some blokes out of Brisbane comp, Jimmy Cowell, all these blokes. And anyway, it was always going to be a struggle because they had all the best players, and we never ran last in the 2 or 3 years I was there, but I liked it. Then I just sort of dropped off, and when that happened, and I come down to South and Sydney and bought the unit underneath there. And when we lived here first before we got this place, and I remember when South were going ordinary at the time, and I rang up George and said, you got any coaching spots there? And he said, we might be doing something at the end of the year. He said, but Alan Jones is coming over. I said, oh, Jesus, what's he want to do? He said, oh, but he'll only do his part. He'll get the players the money and all that. So anyway, I agreed to terms with him. I said, okay, I'll do it. And then when Alan came in, he was just something else. He just wanted to run the show, and I finished up. We won the pre-season comp.
Yes. And
then I bailed out after about 2 games. Canterbury knocked us over at the sports ground here, and a little halfback, little 17 or 18-year-old halfback from Newcastle carved us up one game there. Kid by the name of Andrew John.
Yep.
He carved us up, and then I said to Judy, I'm giving this away. I said, I can't coach this side. He's put his head in all the time, and I just sort of bailed out, and that was it for me. I just lost interest in it, and now I find out they're getting $1 million a year. I want to get back in there again.
That's right. Alan Jones at South Sydney, it didn't work. I don't think it was ever going to work, to be honest. And maybe that's hindsight talking, but mate, an odd fit.
Well, it is. Well, Alan's a great after-dinner talker and all that, and he's great to listen to. Sensational. He does all his research. He does it all done. He's good. But the players don't know about Ivan Lendl pulling a hamstring at half time and winning in 5 sets. They want to know how to stop Mel Meninga.
Yep.
And he couldn't do that. And I sort of left, and then he put his friend in, Kenny Shine in. And then I think from there they just went downhill after that. Shit. Yeah. I mean, they lost a lot of players too in the process because George just couldn't afford anyone. I mean, they had Ian Roberts, and Manly offered him $250 a year or something, which was unheard of. And then they had Craig Wing, they had Braithen Astor, they had Terry Hill, they had Jim Sedaris, they had Jimmy Dimmick. They had all these young champions all played for Australia, come out of the juniors, but they couldn't afford them, and they watched them progress and play for Australia in other
at other clubs, which is a nightmare for any club. While you're still playing, Bob, you're awarded on the Queen's Birthday Honours List with an MBE, the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, which is an order of chivalry rewarding community contributions. You were only the second player ever to receive this whilst still playing. Where does an acknowledgement like that sit in your world?
Well, it was hard to believe when I first got the letter. I was checking to see where Langland's name was, or Bozo's postcode. I was checking to see where it was, and then I thought, this is really official. And I thought to myself, Jesus, better player than me out there, and I wondered why I got it. And I was really appreciative of the fact, and that's it on the wall there. If you can just see around the corner there.
I can.
Yeah, and that's I got that off Our Majesty the Queen, and for a little boy from Redfern, with a little snotty-nosed kid from Redfern, it was truly a feather in the cap, and I was really appreciative, and I thought there's better players than me, or good as players as me out there, like Ron Coote and all these guys. But I think at the time too, I think I may have got a leg up with the Labor Party.
Yes.
Because Ronnie Coote was doing stuff for the Liberal Party, and Gough Whitlam's offsiders got me to do a couple of functions down where they needed to be.
Yeah.
One was up at Moolumbar, and they got in there, and one was down at Wagga, and that guy got in because I had a function prior to the thing.
Yeah.
And it was very ironic that out of the blue came this thing while Gough Whitlam was still in power. So I think me being a Labor man at the time, because Ronnie Coote was as good as me, if not better.
Yeah.
And he said, how'd you get that friggin' MP?
Helping
I said, I
Gough.
told you not to go to the friggin' that Tom Lewis bloke. He was bringing Tom Lewis to the games. Oh, Ronnie was always bringing blokes in. He was bringing the bloke in from Tewsbury. I said, what are you bringing this bloke in for? He said, don't worry about it. Anyway, 6 months later, he's got a brewery truck for nothing. Like he was never backward in coming forward, the old Arcade.
Named in the South Sydney Dream Team, also in the list of the game's greatest 100 players ever. The NRL Hall of Fame as well. In retirement, are you able to appreciate the accolades even more?
Well, it's good to be acknowledged like that. You know, as I said before, I just wanted to play for South. You know, I didn't realise all this was going to come, all these premierships and playing for Australia and captain Australia and MBEs and all this type of stuff. I was just quite happy just to roll along with the punches, and to have it all come along, I treasure everything. Although now I'm not in the Australian Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I just haven't been in there yet, so I don't know whether I've played enough test matches or whatever. But
Matter of time.
So hopefully I can get in there. But for a little kid from Redfern, as I said before, that had aspirations just to wear the red and green jumper, to be acknowledged by all those accomplishments. So I'm very, very proud of.
What are you most proud of across the footballing journey? Is there something that stands out above others?
Oh, the first grand final.
Yep.
You know, people always say, "Oh, isn't playing for Australia the biggest thing you can get?" I said, "Oh, well, it is in a way." I said, "But when I was a kid, without being so big-headed, I was always told when I first started playing, I'd play for Australia one day."
Yep.
But no one ever told me I'd play for South Sydney, the Premiership winning team. No one ever said that. Everyone just say, "Oh, you'll play for Australia one day." When I played President's Cup, they said, "You'll play for Australia." When I played Jersey Fleet, it was all. I was just something everyone just said, so I just took it for granted. But no one ever said, "You'll win a Conference House one day." And then the day we done it, it was truly great because over those 9 months, your
family,
you're plucking away and all that, and you're doing this, and you're going to work, and I got married at 18, so I had a family to look after, and to win the comp after 9 months of toil and toil and misery, was great to get that blazer up, and that was possibly the best accolade I could have.
We learn across our journey. Is there anything you'd take back or do differently? Have you got a regret?
No, I think I could have tried harder in the 65 grand final.
Okay.
You know, we only got beat 12-8, and we beat St George 3 times during the year. And when we beat them, we had a guy called Richie Powell, big baldy-headed front rower, tough as nails, come from Waterloo. And he had himself and Ron Coote getting down the blind side when we beat him in those 3 games. And Richie unfortunately broke his shoulder in the final against North Sydney and couldn't make it in the grand final. So we all had to sort of stand around waiting for Richie, and Richie weren't there, so we had to sort of just put our head down and barge. Yep. It was only 3-yard rule back then, I think, so it was just put your bum down and barge, and they left gaps for us to come through, and then they'd squash you. And we found out in that St George grand final that there was 2 St Georges, one that played during the year and one that played in grand finals, and the one that played in grand finals is the one that won 11 premierships. Yep.
The rugby league world watched your arrival in 1963 and marvelled at your talents on the field for decades. Anyone lucky enough to have shared company off the field admired your character, your depth, your raw honesty, your charisma and your nature. It has been an absolute pleasure. Bobby McCarthy, you, sir, are a legend.
Thanks very much, Andy. You should have been my manager.
I should have. You could have been mine.
What a career. What a guy. What a story. This special episode was presented by our sponsors, Griffin Air Conditioning and Galaxy Finance. Their company details and websites are on our website, andyraymondunfiltered.com.au. Be sure to check them out and support those that support us. The Legends series is a deep dive into not only the athlete but the man behind, celebrating successes, dealing with failures and turning obstacles into challenges. It drops on a Monday. Later in the week, the weekly Wodge is released. On any one episode, you'll hear up to a dozen of the game's finest, both former and current. We talk footy and have a couple of laughs too. Segments, specials and special guests. It's the perfect way to kick off your footy weekend. Saturday is The Blast, looking back at a career or a moment in time through the eyes of the athlete involved. It's a short listen and brilliant. Then on Sundays, one-on-one. Not a footballer in sight as we chat with boxers, mixed martial artists and professional wrestlers, past and present. The list of names featured reads like a who's who. Make sure you're following us on our social media pages, Instagram, Twitter and Facebook, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. That way, you won't miss a thing. Make sure you come back soon, legends.
Johnny Cox says, I was still on a high from the World Cup when we played the Bulldogs the next day. I was running back on side when Bob McCarthy flung out his elbow and broke my nose. I didn't even see it coming. The nose was bent out of shape, and at halftime the doc said he'd straighten it after the game. You got him in the second half, he reckons, and it straightened the nose up. He reckons you busted it twice.
Oh, mate, he's right into my running style. I used to run with the elbows.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I don't know how many times I got not phone calls, I'd see blokes in pubs and that, and they'd said, you broke my jaw and all that. And I said, oh, well, that's part and parcel of the game. I said, but I don't remember getting you like that, stiff arming you. And they said, no, I ran in the elbows. So I must have run something like that. Yeah, ran in the elbow. And so I remember I got collected by Kevin Ryan one day at the cricket ground. Oh, Jesus! I was knocked out, but I got up, and I'm throwing punches everywhere, and I got sent off. It was on the far side of the ground, the cricket ground.
Yep.
And I remember running off when I was coming to. I'm thinking I ran for about half an hour, and I haven't even got to the sideline yet. And you got to run from there another 50 metres.
Yeah, that's right.
It's the longest run off you could ever have, bloody getting sent off. And I said after the game, what happened to me? And they said, Kevin Ryan, you went to tackle him high and he come up with his elbow and he got you right flush on the chin. And I said, what did I do? They said, well, you hit the ground and you got up and you just got up throwing punches everywhere. And that's why I couldn't see anyone. I was still black. So I was punching them until I was running off the field, and I'm thinking, I'm running a long way here. And all of a sudden I haven't come to the halfway, I haven't come to the sideline. And I'm thinking, I've looked back and they're way over there, and I thought, oh, look, there's another 100 yards to go here. Yeah, that was the worst part to ever get sent off at the cricket ground.
Is there a back rower in today's game or recently that reminds you a little bit of yourself?
Well, I like Sam Burgess. He was like me. I like to see him get a little bit out wider. I think he had something with me. I like watching Gordon Tallis.
Yep.
Well, there was Beaver.
I can see a little bit of Gordon Tallis and Stephen Menzies.
Yeah. I think Gordon sort of got carried away a little bit, with getting G'd up and all that.
Yep.
Like sometimes, when blokes would G me up, I wouldn't come back and snarl them. I just thought, well, I got you worried.
Yeah.
And I'd worry about my own game and laugh at them when we're walking off the field. But he was just a fiery hombre, and I liked him. I liked Bobby Lindner. There was been a lot of great running forwards.
Yeah.
You know, we've had some great ones like Noel Cleal, again reminiscent. Ron Coote, I think, was nearly the best outside of Dick Huddart.
Yeah.
Dick Huddart, great runner. You see video of him. He never passed the ball out. He beat them all. Like Ron Coote, when you see Ron Coote's tries, he beats them all. He beats the fullback and all. Ronnie scored about 80. I scored more than him, but I scored a lot of tries from backing up and all that.
Yep.
You see Ron Coote's tries, he breaks the line, then gets around the fullback.
Okay.
And puts the ball down. Like Raper couldn't do that. Raper was a different player. Raper was organising. And they're two great players, and I still can't believe to this day why a bloke like Ron Coote, who played in 10 grand finals, is not an immortal. I mean,
I agree.
St George won 11 comps and got about four immortals.
Yeah.
We've won 21 comps and we got one fullback. So I don't know. We must have been doing something right over those years, all them South people, going way back. So I don't know why he's not an immortal.
What I liked and what I like looking about and looking at when I look at the era that you played in, there wasn't, how do we say it? Halfbacks are all the same now. Hookers are all the same now.
Well, the hooker's not a hooker. He's just the number 9.
He's just a dummy half.
Dummy half, yeah.
But even lock forwards, there were different type of lock forwards. There were different type of back rowers. There were different type of centres or fullbacks or 5'8", and you could play to your own personal strengths.
Yeah, locks at the cover. Locks are like fullbacks in those days. Now there's no locks covers at all. I mean, you know, the way they play now, the lock's in the line, and you know, once that winger gets the overlap, I mean, even the fullback can't get across. He should be there to knock him over, like Laidlands and all them were. Ken Thornett, Les Johns, all them great fullbacks, Graham Eady. They knocked them blokes over. For some reason now they don't know where they hang around here somewhere, but they must see where they're going. And then, you know, and it's the way the football is these days. I don't know what it is. I know the way South play, they sort of take a step back and make the defence sort of stop. Then Cody comes in with a big play, and he's astronomical the way he runs. Like a lot of players can't run left and right full pace and put balls on the chest. He does it day in and day out. I mean, even Wally Lewis couldn't pass to the right.
No, that's
Remember
right.
he had to turn these back to throw the rocket. Cody does it every time. He can throw a 30-yard pass on the boil on the right and the left.
Yeah.
Left, perfect. Right, he just does about 99.9%.
That's certainly a talent.
Yeah.
Do you get into the argument of comparing eras, or do you find it impossible?
Oh, people ask you, but I think they respect you. We played in a tough time, you know.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it was really hard. There was no cameras, so there was a lot of brutality going on, especially in scrums and all that. But that was part of the deal. You knew that growing up. You know, even when you're going to school and that, there was always stinks on in scrums and whatever. Although back in those days, we used to go out west, we used to win by about 40 or 50. You go out there now and you get
different.
Yeah, you get your head cut shaved off. Yeah. But it's back in those days, we used to get the steam train out to St Mary's and Penrith, and because they're only all farmers' kids then, we win by about 40 or 50 because we had pretty good sides in the inner city. As I said, now, aside from in the city now going out there, they'd be lucky to come back with their pants on. You know.